Welcome to this episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. I'm Aric.
And I'm Angie.
We are married with a ton of kids.
We have 6 kids total. He has 3 and I have 3.
My name's Hallie and I love riding horses.
I'm Lexi and I love agriculture.
My name's Carter and I love eating.
My name's Chase and I love lifting weights.
My name's Summer and I love spending my parents' money.
I'm Dane and I love baseball.
Our show is about our blended, blessed, and always a mess life. And our hope is if you find yourself in the same situation we are in, that by sharing our story, all the fun and all the mess, the challenges we are experiencing, it will give you some inspirations, laughs, and community, knowing you are not alone in this mess.
We appreciate you spending time with us. Let's dive in.
Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess, where Angie and I are super excited because gentlemen who I have become friends with, and many of you know, I have been on quite the health journey over the last year. And it started a little bit before that when you're asking questions about if you want to go on a health journey, and was able to have on today one of the guys who has really helped me in that journey. And he is the CEO and founder of Permanent Equity, a company based here in Columbia, Missouri, but it's worldwide. And his name is Brent Beshore. Brent, welcome. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of our show today.
Yeah, thanks, Aric and Angie. Really appreciate you having me on.
So I guess I would start and just say that when you and I connected, it's been over a year ago now, I didn't do a great job in sharing with you why I wanted to meet. I just reached out for coffee, and I didn't do that in a way where I was I didn't really say what I wanted from you. And maybe that was because I was embarrassed. Maybe that was because I didn't know how to just come out and say, hey, I have all these questions. Maybe I was afraid you were going to say no. I don't know. But would you like to get coffee? Because you and I hadn't really spoken in probably about 15 years. We were in our 20s. I would say we were both young and more aggressive than we needed to be in life. Maybe, I don't know.
I certainly was.
Yeah. And so back then, I don't feel like we didn't really hit it off one way or the other. It wasn't good nor bad. It was just, we met and that was that. But I reached out because, and I'll just be completely transparent with the audience. I reached out because a few years back, Brent had hired a guy that I really enjoyed doing worship music at the Crossing. His name was David. And when you did that, I started following you on what at the time was Twitter and now is X. And then I just started seeing this journey that you were sharing with your followers about going from being an atheist to a Christian. And I followed this story for a couple of years. And to the point where I was like, okay, I want to know more about this, because in my own personal journey, after we lost Hallie, I was feeling very lost. And I grew up in the church, but I felt kind of like a stranger. But yet here's this guy who went completely away from God, and now he's all in. And so that's what led me to reach out to you, and how our first meeting really began. Somehow we got through that awkwardness in the coffee.
It wasn't awkward for me. I thought I was great. I was just appreciative. I think there's always this danger in, you see the facade of what people put up. And I think you wanted to get together probably because you wanted to know, is it real or not? And I think the conversation, you were it seemed like the questions you were asking me those first, 15, 20 minutes were kind of like, yeah, you say this publicly, but like, for real? Like, what do you really believe? And I thought it was a wonderful conversation. I remember that conversation being one that, went by quickly and was really enjoyable. And thanks for engaging in it. Thanks for reaching out. I think many guys don't have the courage. I certainly didn't early on, didn't have the courage to ask hard things. It's easy to stay on the surface levels, news, sports, and weather, and talk about the latest Mizzou stuff and whatever. And to have somebody sit down and be like, okay, well, let's get past all that stuff quickly. And like, I have some really deep questions to ask. It's refreshing. And I think that more men should do it.
I still find it odd that I didn't dive in. Like, there was no, we didn't have like a friendship to base on. I just came in with like, hey, I see that you didn't believe in Jesus at all, and now you do. How did that happen?
Tell me about that.
What changed for you? Like, that's not a normal conversation starter, but that was how I went about it. So if you would just briefly maybe share with our audience, our listeners, who some of them struggle with faith. We're very open that this is a Christian-based podcast, but there are people that don't understand. Maybe they'd like to have a deeper relationship with Jesus. And how did that work for you, where you went from becoming an atheist to asking the questions to want to be a Christian?
Yeah, that's a big question. I would say I Oh, so I told my mom I didn't believe in God when I was 9. I can remember distinctly because we were driving by the Carl Richards bowling alley in Joplin, Missouri. I was in the front seat, and my brother was in the back seat. My brother's 3.5 years younger, and I told my mom I didn't believe in God. And I expected her to kind of push back on me, challenge me. I mean, golly, can you imagine how difficult a 9-year-old I was? Golly. And then my brother starts crying in the back seat. And it's sort of like one of those memories I distinctly remember sort of choosing. I was like, no, I'm not going to go along with what I just saw as dead religion. Like I didn't see a lot of, I didn't understand the gospel. I saw it as a bunch of rules that if you followed them, maybe you got more favor in this life than the next. It all kind of seemed lackluster to me. And it's not something I wanted. I was like, why are we spending time like talking about this stuff when it really doesn't have any applicability to my life? It became clear to me that the way to win at life was to just win, to achieve things, to be successful. And when I looked at the people in my life that I felt like were winning, they were making money and being applauded by people. And I kind of figured out early on if I won and the spotlight went on me, that life went better. I got more of what I wanted. And really that carried me, through high school, through college, into grad school, and then really into my 20s in business when we met for the first time. And I was just purely focused on, okay, what's the game that I'm playing? And then how do I win at that game? And had left God behind. It just was not a thought. In fact, I'd gotten into new atheism, Hitchens, Dawkins, Sam Harris, that group. And I thought Christians were idiots. And by the way, we are idiots, just for different reasons than people think. And it was really my 28th year of life that I was miserable. I'd won all the games that I thought I could win. So my 28th year of life, I made $1 million for the first time in my life. I remember distinctly looking at my taxable income from Williams Keepers and talking with John Weaver, our probably mutual friend, longtime accountant. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I'd won. I remember thinking to myself, man, if I could ever make $1 million like in a single year, that would be like the pinnacle, right? I had a beautiful wife who loved me. I had good friends. We were 28th on the Inc. 500 that year, so the 28th fastest growing company in the United States, fastest growing company, I think, in Missouri history at that time. I don't know if it's still true. And I was invited to the White House to participate in entrepreneurship policy and advise them. And was started invited into all these rooms of famous, wealthy, influential people. And I felt hollow inside, like the whole world felt gray. Jim Carrey has this great quote. He said, I hope you get everything your heart desires so you realize it's not the thing. And I really felt like I went through that. If I was God, I would have smited me, right? I was an enemy of God. I made fun of his followers. And instead, God did this really unusual, maybe it's how God works all the time, but for me, it felt very unusual, which was he gave me everything my heart desired for me to realize it wasn't it. And it was around that time, I remember at the Inc. 500 conference in particular, there's a gentleman there by the name of John Garrett, who I'm still dear friends with, but I'd met him at the Inc. 500 conference, and he was this jolly Texan, and in a way that only jolly Texans can do. I remember him asking me, we were out to dinner, weird series of events. We ended up out to dinner one night, just the two of us alone. He said, Brent, where do you stand with the Lord? And I was like, John, what are you talking about? Where do I stand with the Lord? I just met you like an hour ago, and I don't stand anywhere with the Lord. And he was like, that was the most peculiar thing to him. He's like, oh, you don't have any faith? And I was like, no, what are you talking about? And all of a sudden it was him and 3 or 4 other people, including, you mentioned David, David's father, Dave Cover, who I met through a not-for-profit board that I was on. And all of a sudden my world started being surrounded by really deeply thoughtful Christians, and they broke every mold that I had. And over time, I came to believe that what I thought was impossible was actually not only plausible, but probable, and became a follower of Jesus. I would say that's kind of like step one. And I do believe I was saved. I do believe, because I truly did believe. I was like, okay, I'm putting my faith, right? Like if you ask me, put your nickel down on what it is, I was like, at that time, I was like, I believe that Jesus is who he says he is. I can say the creeds without blushing. But there was still like this, I believed, but I hadn't fully surrendered my life at that point. I think I believed it, but I held a lot back. I didn't even know how much I was holding back. And then I think over the course of the next 5 to 7 years, it really was a process of surrendering massive areas of my life and the business and my health and all these things. And by the way, the more I surrender to the Lord, the more it becomes beautiful. Everything I surrender to the Lord, he makes new and restores and redeems. And it's this beautiful yeah, it's just this beautiful process he keeps putting me through, and everything that I keep holding back. And I think that I want to keep mine and I don't trust from the Lord. That's the stuff that I still have major problems with in my life. And so I think that was the process whenever you saw me and you said, hey, I've been watching this process. It was that process of me being honest about having really deep brokenness in my life that I surrendered and was able to have the Lord do something with, because God won't transgress our free will. I mean, God gave us our free will. Unless we have free will, we can't have real love, right? Because you can't love a captor. And so it requires free will, the choosing, and God will not transgress. If we say, Lord, I don't want you in this area of my life, he will say, okay, your will be done. So either we say to him, your will be done, or he says to us, your will be done. And I've just learned over time that my will sucks, and it is not a fun experience to continue to live in my will. And so even this morning, my prayer time this morning was, I've got areas of my life that I know are still unsurrendered, and that I'm trying to have the courage to surrender to the Lord. And I'm curious to see what he does with it.
So Angie had about that time challenged me in life to find men who were maybe a little more deep thinking and provided more substance into my life. And honey, you can see in the first 5 minutes why I enjoy walking with Brent and the energy that he brings and the engagement. He definitely gives me things to think about, and I enjoy listening to his thoughts on all of these things.
Yes, that's all very clear right now. I totally get it. I totally get
I just
it.
talk a lot.
I'm like,
You just tell me to
tell
shut
me
up.
more.
Yeah. So it was about that time then that we finished our coffee. And one, you said to me, you should look at this book, Practicing the Way. And I did. I went out, I got it, and I started reading it. And then we ended up reading it in our small group at the Crossing shortly after that. And I loved the book. So many takeaways. We started to meet. You said, well, next time in a couple of weeks, let's get together and let's walk and we'll talk about things in the book that you're. And that was kind of the first thing for me that I have latched onto now that I'm doing with multiple men. And that is the walk-in talks, which I think is your baby, but I love it. And I am walking all the time, sometimes jogging now even. And we started to then deepen our conversations first around the book and what Jesus is really asking us to do, which the first thing you said to me was, we ask so many questions, but really all he wants from us is to follow him. And I think for people that are listening today that are confused about what they should be doing with Jesus and where to even start, I think that was the thing that you said to me that really stuck out, was he just wants us to follow him.
Yeah, Jesus wants us to tell the truth, and Jesus wants us to follow him. And I mean, I think following Jesus is taking it seriously, that he is alive and that he's with us. I mean, the same power that resurrected Jesus, we're told, lives in us. Do we believe it, right? Do we feel like we have the authority and the power? And I got to be honest, most of the time, and this is an area that I'm working on, right? I feel like a mall cop most of the time, right? I feel like I have the authority, but no power. I feel like I'm, Paul Blart, walking around the mall, telling people like, hey, no, really. And I think that's not at all who God makes us to be. I think that God makes us to walk and do the things that Jesus did. Jesus cast out, he raised up, and he healed people. And if you think about what your days could be, it is really just surrendering everything to the Lord and asking, okay, who do you want me to raise up? Who do you want me to heal? And what do you want me to cast out? And there's a lot that needs casting out. There's a lot of people that need raising up, and there's a lot of healing in this broken world. And so when I'm properly surrendered, when I'm thinking clearly, when I'm in the right story of reality, those things come naturally to me. And when I'm living in my small little world of selfish gain, and Blaise Pascal would call it an curvature, where you're curved in on yourself, it's almost impossible to do those things. And so, I think for me, I'm trying to get simplifying. There's, hundreds of thousands of books written about following Jesus. I'm trying to get back to the very simple thing, which is, Lord, what do you have for me? What should I know? Who should I be? What should I do in your name? And then just get to participate with God. It's the coolest thing ever. I mean, the things that I see, to use a quote from a good friend of mine, John Marsh, he says, I get a front row seat to miracles. And that's what, the more that I can surrender my life and the more that I see the Lord working through me and around me, I've just gotten a front row seat to miracles. I've seen things now that I just could never have imagined that were possible. And, there's a whole unseen realm that we're, I think, all aware of that's there, but we think of it's kind of in the distance, that it's not here and now. And I think the veil between here and there is thin, if we want it to be.
That totally resonates with me. I believe that too. I believe that there is this awakening or this awareness that you have, that it is a thin layer when you can really connect. And I never would have thought that if I had not lost Hallie, because now I feel this like deep connection to God, to Hallie even. But where I think most people struggle and where I struggle, because I do feel like I feel extremely connected. And I get what you're saying too, of this front row seat, because when I'm leaning in and helping other people, amazing things happen, like weirdly connection points. It's like I never would have actually seen or experienced this had I not been more open and not curved in. But what I struggle with is that trusting and surrendering from a day-to-day perspective. You know, I have this churn in me to do something different and more, but that is so scary. And like, I'm tactical driven of like, okay, what's the plan? Now, what do I need to do for these steps? And so how do you know if you're really surrendering? Because you still have to take action. And that's what, like, I'm curious what your conversation in your head is on being able to really surrender on a day-to-day basis, because it's like, should I be doing that or not? Or where am I supposed to go? Or is this not work, in favor of God? Like, I have to work, but then, you know what I mean?
I totally
go crazy with it.
Oh, I totally get it. So again, here's my take. I don't know if this is totally right, but I think biblically, we're told that we are God's will until he checks us. So if we have the Spirit in us, we don't have to wonder, should I do this? Should I not do this? You can just be free. I mean, Jesus says, I made you free. Like you were bought for a price. You were, gave you for freedom's sake, right? So I can tell when I'm walking in freedom and I can tell when I'm not. And there's definitely a feeling that I think that all of us know, if we just tune in a little bit to it, is like, okay, am I fear driven? Am I walking in a spirit of fear? Am I walking in concern? Am I like sort of anxious and vigilant? And that for me is clearly a feeling that I'm self-reliant at that point. So a paradigm that I like to think about a lot is the opposite of faith is not doubt. It is self-reliance. So if you look at what Jesus said is, I do the Father's will, right? I'm reliant upon the Father. That is the opposite of being self-reliant. And so, if you look at Jesus, Jesus was never confused about what he should do, because he was always just saying, I'm doing the Father's will, right? I do what the Father tells me to do. I think it's very clear in this world. Now, is that, the Father going to say to you, oh, you should get the lavender soap versus the, whatever lemon soap? Like, I don't think God cares. And if he does care, I think he'll put a check in you and it'll be very clear which soap you should get, right? I mean, to use obviously a funny, trivial analogy, but I think that a lot of Christians, and by the way, me too, I can get obsessed with like, okay, well, how do I know? Do I know if I'm going in the right direction or not? I think that God's just like, relax, you're free, walk in freedom. Now, when he checks us is the real question. And I can believe me, I know that feeling. I think I've told Aric this story. I will get very distinct feelings about people. And by the way, most people are just neutral. Like I don't get any distinct feelings at all about most people. See somebody on the street, nothing. Meet somebody as a friend of a friend, nothing. I mean, I'm free. Like if I want to pursue them or if I want to, whatever, you're free to do it. Some people I have this incredible draw towards. Oh my gosh, like there's a reason why I need to move forward with that person. And I think we know that. We can feel that, like that it's just a piece about it. There's a drive, and it's not a selfish drive. It's not a drive to gain anything. It's a drive to do something together, right? To co-create. And then there's opposite of that. There's some people that are red lights. And I remember distinctly a great example of this is there's a gentleman who he reached out to me, professing Christian, really big deal in the financial world. And he said, hey, I've been following you for a long time. I want to bless you in the business. I want to introduce you to all my friends. I want to, bring on a bunch of new investors to you. I think you're going to do incredible things. And I mean, all my fleshy things, ooh, boy, that feels fantastic, right? And there was something in me that was like, don't do it. Don't do it. Not for you. Not for you. Don't move forward. Just red light, full blinking red light. Do not move forward. And so I said, oh, well, that's, super nice. Let me know if there's anything that comes up in the future, just trying to be polite. And he said, well, actually, I want you to come and I'm going to organize this event around you. And I want you to come. It's in like a month. And I was like, wow, when you say organize, and he's like, yeah, I've got these family offices going to be flying in from around the country. And I really want you to be there. And I'm going to make you the star of the show. And everything in me, all my flesh was like, this is the best thing ever. I mean, this is perfect. This is exactly, I mean, I'm going to feel special. Maybe we're gain new investors for the business. It's going to be amazing, new connections. And I felt that check from the Lord so clearly. It was like, do not do this. I'm telling you, there's nothing there for you. Do not do this. Do not do this. And I was like, sure, I'll come. Absolutely. So I go. And it's funny because I remember even telling my wife, she was like, so how, what's the schedule? And I was like, oh, it's, this, whatever. I said, but I think I may be back early. And it was for me, it was this test of like, I felt so clearly I shouldn't be there, but every worldly logic and fleshly part of me said I should go, right? And this is the battle I think we face, right? And I think that we face this in some dramatically less ways often, but I think this is very clear. And so I went, and it was a debacle. It was an absolute debacle. The guy was as close to fraud as you can get without being fraudulent. He had basically used my name to attract a bunch of other people. They weren't family offices. It was the conversation was crazy. And I basically left almost immediately as soon as getting there. I mean, it was so weird. It was a complete waste of time and money. And it was so clear that the Lord was like, hey, I'm telling you, all you have to do is just trust me. Just trust me that be my will until I check you. But when I check you, you have to listen and you have to obey. And I think that's all that it means to follow Jesus is like, we get to walk in freedom, put our faith in him, that we believe that he is Lord, King of Kings. We say, hey, Lord, what do you want me to do? And I'll try to follow your will. And until then, I'm going to be free to do whatever I need to do.
You're the first person that has explained in better words than I could put it. I love the idea of he puts a check in you, because I've told Aric before, like, there's just people I feel connected to or drawn to. Like, I can instantly, if I cross paths with a mom that's lost a child, there's this instant connection, or another person that's got a similar mission. I don't know how to describe it, but then you just feel this like instant connection. And also, flip side, we've talked a lot on here of even just what happened to Hallie and the red flags for years that I felt in that relationship. So that all makes sense, is like, it's a check of like in your gut, but that's coming from God saying, here's your path. You need to listen.
How amazing is that, though? The creator of the universe, who holds us together, who knitted us together in our mother's wombs, is so intimate with us. Isn't this distant clock maker, right? Who made this clock and lets it unwind. No, he's intimate with us here and now. Like, how incredible is this? That we were given a helper that lives in us. Like, we are the temple of the Holy Spirit. And it's amazing. Like, when you actually think about what that means, it's like, it's like hard to wrap my head around. I think that's where the process of sanctification for the rest of our lives is just experiencing God at a deeper and deeper and deeper level. And I think he gives us lots of opportunities. And we're told, in this world, we will have trouble. Period. In this world, we will have trouble. He promised us we will have trouble. Like, I've realized in my life, like, I have 10,000 blessings every day, and I always have 10 problems. Always. Doesn't matter when those problems get solved. I always have 10 problems. And so the question is, are we going to live and look at the 10,000 blessings? Are we going to say, Lord, I trust you? And by the way, trusting in horrific circumstances. And I can't even imagine. I have 4 children. I can't imagine losing one of them and the pain and suffering. And yet somehow what we're told, somehow, some way, it's for our good, for their good, and God's glory. And we don't know how. And this world is broken, and God promises to redeem it, promises to make all the bad and the sad things come untrue. That is the hope that we have, because if we don't have that hope, where does that leave us?
Yeah.
That was the world I lived in. When I was an atheist, there was no hope. Everything was gray.
That's amazing to just listen to your faith and how it's continued to grow. And you mentioned several minutes ago, it was either our last walk or the walk before, about that curvature where we can go inward. And I do think when that happens so much, we're looking at ourselves, it's oftentimes the devil, right, wants us to rely on ourselves, because we, for me, can be my own worst enemy. And so when we talk about things like that while we're walking, a lot of times we incorporate talking about our wives, our children, and what it looks like when we don't go inwards and when we try to humble ourselves and give back to those relationships. And can you just talk a little bit about how your relationship with God and how you invest in that is helping you to not go inward, but to give back to your wife and your kids?
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, I would say we're all a work in progress. I would say, my marriage is
Amen, brother.
so much better. Yeah. So much better today than it was a year ago. And part of it is like, I think that C.S. Lewis has this great quote of like, it's not that we have too high expectations, it's that we have too low of expectations. And I think about this a lot. I think that we all have a yearning in marriage in particular for God in the middle of our marriage. Like we want to be seen and known. We want to be back in the Garden of Eden. We want to be naked and unashamed. And the reality is that no matter how long we've been married and no matter how close we are to our spouse, it's really, really hard, if not almost impossible, to be naked and unashamed. Naked physically, naked emotionally. They get to see all of our worst parts of us. And, it's hard to treat the other with respect and with honor when you see them at their worst, right? They appear very ordinary, no matter what they're capable of doing. And I think that's the lie of the enemy, is he tries to make us feel ordinary and makes us try to make others feel ordinary. The reality is, if we could see each other for who we really were, I think C.S. Lewis again said this, is we'd be tempted to worship one another in our perfected state. And I think that, in marriage, it is really just about telling the truth. I mean, I think marriage works the same way as every other relationship. It's just the closest we get in every way to the union of the Lord, right? To the Trinity. And it has incredible opportunities for connectivity and for union. I mean, to be truly one flesh. And at the same time, it has tremendous opportunities to be destructive and a horrific, terrible influence in our lives if we don't go the right direction. So I would say is, how do I think about my marriage? I think about as trying to serve and not be served. I think it's very clear in Ephesians. It says, I'm supposed to love my wife like Jesus loved the church. The church killed Jesus. The church slandered Jesus. And so it's really hard for me to remember that when maybe I disagree with some of the things that my wife's done, when I don't feel loved and seen. And then the question is, okay, well, what does it mean what does it look like? And what does it mean that Jesus calls us to die for her, right? To die for her like Jesus died for the church, to serve her like Jesus served the church. And this is the slow process of death. I think that we're crucifying our flesh. I mean, that's what Romans talks about, crucifying our flesh. And man, I feel that sometimes. I had that happen recently. There was a couple days ago where my wife did something that, man, it really hurt. And I kind of started going down the path of like, well, I need to be right, and I need to tell her she's wrong, and I need to feel justified. I need to feel justice. I want justice. And there's something in me that was like, nope, you got to eat that sin. Like, take it and consume it. And you don't need to be right. You don't need to correct her. You need to say sorry for your part, and you need to move on. And it felt like death. I mean, I'm telling you, like, it hurt so freaking bad. And I even woke up today thinking about it. And part of me, even this morning, I almost brought it up to her this morning. And I was like, nope, I can just let it go, And I think that's the process that hopefully my wife's, I think, going through the same thing with me. And the more that we can give each other grace and speak truth, an idea, Aric, that you and I have talked about is to be fully known, and to be fully loved in being fully known is the greatest gift that we can give one another. And in order to be fully known, you can't have secrets. And so that, the issue is, how many secrets do we keep from our spouse? The more secrets, I can't remember who said this, but they said, you're only as sick as your secrets. And I think most people are keeping tremendous secrets. And I think I've gone through periods of time where I've kept secrets from my wife. My wife's confessed secrets to me. And the cloudedness and the heaviness that you can tell when somebody is harboring secrets, you can see in their eyes. The eyes look heavy. They look scared. And the lie that the enemy tells us is, if we're fully known, that we won't be loved, right? If you only knew. And the problem is we put on these masks then, and the masks, they let in all the bad stuff. All the bad stuff still gets through, but the good stuff all gets blocked, because if you're not fully known and Angie tells you, gosh, I love you so much, what you say to yourself is, yeah, but if you only knew. Yeah, but if you only knew. So you can't actually receive any of the love that she's genuinely trying to give if there's any of those secrets that are there. Because if she only knew who you really were, she wouldn't actually say that. And that's the lie. And what I've experienced in my life is, the more that I can be fully known, and you got to be careful. You're not fully known to everyone, right? But fully known to your spouse, fully known to a small group of friends. The reality is the opposite is exactly the true, which is, the more I'm known and the more I reveal the ugly stuff, the stuff that I don't want to be known, that's when my wife says, oh, now I can see you more clearly and I love you. And that's when it really hits home. And so I think it's that process over and over again of how do we know that we're secure in the love of the Lord, know that he's got our back. We are royalty. We went from being beggars to being royalty, that our identity is fully rooted in him. That gives us the foundation to be able to then go out and move into the world and be fully known to others and receive love. I mean, that's what I think oftentimes we receive the love of God through those people closest to us.
This is great combo. So true. I mean, just
you're thinking about how much you like to know me right now. Is that what it is? You're just thinking, gosh, yes, I want to know you more, Aric.
Can we actually, maybe something, can I just say one more thing on that topic?
Yeah.
There's a temptation when somebody is really vulnerable with us. So let's kind of go from the opposite direction. Somebody's trying to be known to us. And they are going to bring up the ugly stuff, right? The stuff when you pick up the rock and there's the squiggly things underneath it, right? And you're like, oh gosh, I didn't fully appreciate it. I didn't understand how messy you really were. I think there's a temptation to justify it. There's a temptation to either move in one or two directions to judge the person for telling you and for being who they really are, or to sweep it under the rug and say it's not a big deal. I think both are the wrong approach. I think what I've experienced is when somebody's revealing things to me that's their deepest, darkest, that really nasty stuff that's in the, down deep in the soul, it's to fully acknowledge that, man, that is ugly. Like, we need to be able to look at ugly and say it's ugly, and we need to tell the truth about it. Like, that is not okay. And also, I love you. And also, I'm really glad that you brought that up to me. And I think in marriage, because oftentimes our sin impacts one another so closely, right? That's really hard to provide either one of that, the truth and the grace. And I think that oftentimes we, depending on personalities and depending on the dynamics of the marriage, we err on one side or the other, and we really miss the opportunity to be fully known to one another. And I would just encourage anybody who's listening to this, like, the greatest gift that you can give your spouse is to tell them the hard stuff. And the greatest gift that you can give to your spouse when they tell you the hard stuff is to tell them, man, that is ugly. And I love you.
Yeah, you can have both truths, right? Like, I think that's the hard part of navigating that. You can empathize, you can see the person, you can also feel all the emotions, and you can still show up for them. All of it, which also makes it all very messy.
Yeah. Messy is a great word. Yeah. Well, so keep moving forward in the direction of how we want to relate to Jesus. I do think living a healthier lifestyle makes it easier for me to live more in step with my Lord and Savior, because I can tell you that when I'm not working out, when I was drinking too much, there was like a barrier, right, that I was intentionally putting between myself and God. And it goes back to what you said earlier on about surrender. Like, until I want to surrender all the areas of my life to God, he'll let me continue to do what I'm doing, but I have to surrender those. And so for you and I both, we've both been on health journeys over the last couple of years. I mean, you've been on this massive health journey. And again, I followed a lot of that online as well. You've dropped a significant amount of weight. You were one of the people that I first started talking to pretty shortly into our walks, where I was like, I think maybe I'm drinking too much. And you were telling me about this athletic company beer that you were drinking. You had really been cutting out alcohol from your life. And I remember one of the last walks before I decided to stop drinking, I said to you, I was like, I'm really unhappy. But I wasn't just going to say, I had said I'm drinking too much, but I wasn't really just going to say, I think at that point you're asking someone to tell you to stop, but nobody's going to tell you that. Right. And so I appreciate your support and the journey of my overall health. And for you personally, how have you utilized your journey to deepen your relationship with God and your family?
Yeah. Well, first, it's been awesome to be able to walk with you in that, Aric, and see how I've seen just dramatic changes in you over the last 15, 16 months. I just want to affirm that. Like, it's been remarkable to see it. As I told you, I think the last walk, keep doing whatever you're doing. Right. Yeah, right. Keep surrendering things to the Lord. Keep following the Lord as closely as you can. And to me, it's interesting because I told somebody it was about 3 years ago. I said, I just feel heavy. I feel heavy physically. I feel heavy emotionally. I feel heavy spiritually. And the feeling of heaviness right? I think that's a form of slavery. And I think that we can feel physically, because we are embodied creatures, that, this is not a Gnostic gospel that we have, right? It's not like we have the soul and the body, and it's a very Greek thing to be like, oh, well, the soul is what matters, ideas are what matter, and the body doesn't matter. That's not how God looks at it at all. That's not what the Bible tells us. Like, we are fully embodied creatures. Like, we are our bodies as well. And I think that our bodies largely, not always, but largely represent what's going on in the interior life that we have as well. So I think there's a deep connection between our interior and exterior life, what people can see. And I think what people could see is like, you can't hide being fat. And I grew up heavy. I grew up highly anxious. I grew up with a lot of insecurity. And like I said before, this drive to win and succeed. And I just remember food is a coping mechanism for everything for me. I mean, I've gone through a lot of counseling. We could talk about counseling, but I've gone through a lot of counseling. And I remember we did one session. It was like 3 hours. I'm an incredible counselor. And at the end, she was like, well, Brent, it sounds like when you eat when you're joyful, and you eat when you're sad, and you eat when you're mad, and you eat when you're trying to provide hospitality, and you eat when you're anxious, and you eat because it's Tuesday. Like, you just eat all the time, because that was a major source of comfort for me. Right. And I felt a lot of stress and strain. And, I have 4 kids. Home life's kind of crazy. I have a very demanding career. Work's kind of crazy. And so it was an outlet for me to cope and soothe kind of everywhere. But the problem is that consumption, and this is where, the idea of gluttony comes from, right, is the overindulgence. It separates us from the Lord. It's an act of self-reliance, right? Instead of taking that pain to the Lord and saying, Lord, I feel anxious. I don't know what's going on. I'm fearful. I need you. I need to take this to the cross, and I needed to receive God's love and assurance. Instead of that, I was short-circuiting that, and I was taking it and I was being incurved, right? I was trying to take it, and it was the tool that I had, right? It was the tool that was always there for me. We live in a society of abundance of food, right? When you know that food will soothe you, and food's available everywhere, and you need a lot of soothing, it's not complicated what happens. And so, I gained over 50 pounds in my 20s because I was maniacally focused on the business and how I was going to be successful. I think my peak weight was 252, and I saw a picture of myself. I didn't even recognize myself. I was like, oh my gosh, I have gotten big. And then I got down to about 235, 236 and hung out there for about a decade. And I made the decision. It was right around my 40th birthday. So about 2.5 years ago, that I had to ask the Lord to change me. I felt like I was ready to be changed. And that's really the act. I mean, I can talk about the actual physical work that I did, and, working out and how to eat better and all the tools and tips and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, all of those were gifts from the Lord. Like, I had to ultimately take this area of my life and say, Lord, I no longer want to be self-reliant in how I cope with this world. I want to take it to you, and I want to receive the gift that is health. I don't know how else to say it. It is really a gift. And so right around that time, I mean, this is always how the Lord works, right? Like, you look at that and you say, oh, I just happened to be praying, and I happened to surrender. Then all of a sudden, all these resources were just there for me, and everything just kind of fell into place, and everything went well. And it's like, yeah, because that's how the Lord works, right? He works all these things together. And so, if you back up 3 years ago, eating too much, I mean, I was drinking a ton. I didn't even think alcohol was something that was dangerous. I was like, I have 3 or 4 or 5 drinks. Who cares, right? Like, I can handle it. No big deal. I'm not getting drunk. Maybe feel it a little bit here and there, but it's no big deal. And what the Lord really showed me was like, man, I was poisoning my body. I was poisoning my ability to even connect with the Lord. And so, yeah, the last 2.5 years, I'm down to 180-ish, 185, kind of between 180 and 185, and work out almost every day. And I really enjoyed it. My heart's been, and that's right, it's got to be a heart transformation. The Lord has transformed my heart from, I hated to work out, I hated to eat healthy, and now, like, I've love fat-free Greek yogurt, and I like to go running. I don't know what to do other than say the Lord changed me. It truly is that dramatic in my life. And I'm deeply appreciative. I feel lighter physically, lighter emotionally, lighter spiritually. And I feel like, the next 10 years, I'm really excited to see where that goes. And hopefully I continue to become lighter. It's a really good test for me, though. If I wake up with that, there's a certain type of hunger that has nothing to do with food. It has nothing to do with being actually hungry. And that hunger can be, by the way, for alcohol. It can be for food. I think it's the same type of hunger for pornography even. I mean, if there's a certain hunger that you're like, I need to feed this thing that's not okay in me. And I know when I have that, not 100% track record, but I know I'm trying to take that to the Lord and say, Lord, I need you to be there. I need you to love me, because clearly what I'm feeling is a disconnect with you.
All right. So maybe one more question before we get into what we're grateful for. You and I could talk for hours. I would ask you question after question. And so I always appreciate Brent being able to listen and answer me well. And even listening to you just now, one of the things you were talking about is it is so great that when you ask the Lord to help you, then all these resources became available. And one of the times we were talking about something completely different, but it applies to so many things that all of us are doing on a daily basis. It's like we're trying so hard sometimes. It's like that Far Side cartoon where the gifted kid is trying to get into the school. It says gifted, but he's trying to push his way in, and all he has to do is pull the door. And it's so true. Like if we just allow God, if we pay attention, then God gives us all these different resources. So with that being said, just one last question before we get into what we're grateful for. And that is, how are you, for somebody who's just trying to get started in deepening their relationship with God, what are some ways that you incorporate God every day into your life? Maybe if you're planning out something new that you want to achieve, since you are such a high achiever, very growth mindset, how do you incorporate God daily into those different activities?
Yeah, well, actually, to your last point, I have really struggled to not turn being with God into a performance. I mean, I would say I went to seminary for a while, and actually I realized that being in seminary was driving me further from God, not closer to God, because what I realized was my temptation is to want to know more about God than to want to know God. And I think that's a huge difference. Now, I'm going to caveat, that's me. I see a lot of people who are Bible illiterate who claim to be Christians. So let's think for a second about, what does it mean to follow God? What does it mean to love God? You got to know the God that you love. Like, if you don't know about the God you love, like, how do you know what he wants for your life? How do you know what he says? How do you know what's right, what's wrong? Like, how do you know how he's going to respond to you? We're told, we've been given a tremendous amount of God's teaching to us. And I mean, we read the Bible, but the Bible reads us. And so for me, I just try to get back to the source material every single morning. I have a Bible in a year reader that it's Old Testament, New Testament, a little bit of Psalms, a little bit of Proverbs every morning. And that is really the fountainhead of my beginning to know about God and really to know God. I think that it's really difficult for me. I can't imagine being a follower of Jesus and not often getting into the Word, and then that leading me into prayer. I just don't know what it would look like to follow God. Mother Teresa has this great line. She was asked, well, how do you follow God? And I'm just going to go ahead and repeat her, because that's basically the question you're asking me. And she said, spend an hour with God every morning and don't do anything he tells you not to do. That's basically it. Yeah. Like, just don't intentionally disobey. But in order to know what disobedience is, you got to know God. So you got to spend time with God. And I think reading the Bible is a great way to do that. I would say is oftentimes I'll be struggling with something. I'll be like, Lord, I don't know what to do with this relationship, with this brokenness. I don't know what to do with this, maybe this deal that we're involved in, this issue that, now that I'm in my 40s, like everything hurts all the time in my body. It's like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, and then I'll open up God's word, and it's remarkable how often there'll be something in there that directly pops out to me, just speaks to me. And so then I do an exercise that really helps me to understand what I think God's trying to tell me, which is, it's called know, be, do. And it's actually a really interesting backstory on this. I'll briefly tell you. So I was at an event 4 years ago, and I met this guy, and Angie was saying, it's just this draw towards certain people. I remember I sort of caught, met eyes with him. I was like, man, that guy that's somebody who God has made different, a real leader of men. And not in a bravado. He's quiet. He was just earnest, really amazing human. And I asked him, I said, hey, I know you're busy at this event, but afterwards, can I get 15 minutes? I just have a few questions to ask you. He said, sure. Very generous with his time. And so I got on the phone with him maybe a week later, and I said, hey, if you could go back So he's in his late 50s. I said, if you go back to your mid 30s, late 30s, and tell yourself just one piece of advice that would like help you the most in your life, what would it be? And he said, oh, that's easy. I was like, great. Got my like notepad out. I'm getting ready to write down. And he said, I'd read the Bible every morning. And I go through this exercise. What should you know? Who should you be? And what should you do? And I was like, no, be, do, huh? That's it. And he's like, yeah, that's it. And I was like, well, any other advice you have for me? And he was like, did you not hear me? You asked for the number one piece of advice and I just gave it to you. You just glossed right over. I was like, yeah, but it's just like read your Bible and reflect on it. And he's like, no. You're missing the point. You do this every day of your life and it'll transform your life. And I was like, really? He's like, every single morning. He's like, do you read your Bible every single morning? I was like, no. He's like, okay. He's like, do you reflect on your Bible? Do you try to hear from God every morning? No. He's like, right. That's why I'm telling you. The number one thing you could do that would change your life, potentially change your family's life for generations, would be wake up every morning, read some of the Bible. What should you know? Who should you be? What should you do? And I said, well, how do I get started? He said, how about this? I'll text you and you start responding. And so he texted me his response, his morning exercise for maybe 3 or 4 days. And he said, hey, are you going to respond? And man, I tell you what, that first one was probably like the prayer and meet the parents. It was probably the worst thing you've ever seen in your life. But we've been texting now for every day for 4 years. Every single day, I text him every single morning without exception. And I got to say, this time in my life, these 3.5, 4 years have been the greatest growth spiritually, emotionally, relationally that I've ever experienced. And so, I mean, he told me it would transform my life, and it has. And so that would be the advice that I would give is, as mundane as it sounds, as stupid as it sounds, as Christianese as it sounds, I'm telling you, there's something about getting up every morning without exception. Read the Bible. What should you know? Who should you be? And what should you do? And I have them for now. I have years of them now. I keep them I'm up on my desktop right now. It's a 2025 prayer journal. I had 2024, I had 2023, started 2022 halfway through, and it's changed my life.
I think that's so many people don't think that, because I remember going to church for years, and I remember Dave Cover asking, when was the last time you picked up your Bible? Answer it honestly. I had it sitting next to my bed, but I don't know when I picked it up. So then when Hallie died, I did start to pick it up because I just didn't know what else to do. And so I've read my Bible more since she died than I ever have, but it's not every day. And I think that's another area of growth for me. So last year, I read more of my Bible than I ever have in a year. So then I set a goal to read even more of it this year, right? But if I were to do it every morning and actually reflect on it, I could see how that would give me an even better, it's almost like I'm in the shallow end of the pool right now in reading it several times a week. But if I really want to get into the deep end and I really want to continue to change my heart and change my wife and my kids' hearts for Jesus in better ways, it's going to entail that time that Jesus took every day to be with his Father.
Well, and it doesn't have to be an hour.
Dedicate.
I would just say is too, just start small. I mean, it's kind of like when I was first getting in shape, I said, I'm going to work out every day. Well, what qualifies as a workout? A 15-minute walk. 15-minute walk. I mean, I would say is start with 10 minutes. Can you, and it can be the most rudimentary, read one line of the Bible, one line, just pick one verse to read. And then just pray, God, what do you want me to know? Who do you want me to be? And what do you want me to do? And just write one sentence for each one of those. If it takes you 10 minutes, you probably went slow, right? Just try that every single morning. The first thing when you roll out of bed, every single morning. Because I realize if I don't do it first thing, day gets in the way. I've got all the stuff coming at me. And by the way, I'm kind of screwed up for that day anyway, because I can reset my mind. I wake up every day, by the way, I should probably say this, forgetful. I forget what the story of reality is. I forget that I'm not the central actor in this play of life. I forget that I'm not alone, that I'm not an orphan. I wake up anxious and frustrated. And then that is the time where I reorientate my entire life into the one true story of reality that then transforms the entire rest of my day. But man, I would tell you that is the number one thing that I would recommend to anybody who's listening to this is just do it. Just try it. Try it for a month, try it for 30 days and see if your life doesn't change.
I love that. I love it. All right. Well, we've taken enough of your time today, good sir. So we will ask you and all of us really, what is something that we are grateful for before we wrap? Which one of you would like to go first today?
I want to hear what Angie has to say.
Oh, well, mine's going to be super cheesy because it's going to be just that I'm so grateful for this conversation. And I've been quiet throughout this because everything that you're saying is exactly what I need to hear. So I'm like just consuming all this content and thinking about applying it to my life because I feel like I'm at this stage where the direction I'm going is not where I'm meant to go, and trying to figure out how do I really trust God and figure out where my life should go with everything that we've gone through. So I get emotional, but it's been good.
No, thank you, Angie. You've got such a kind and tender heart. I can tell. I've heard amazing things about you from Aric, and it's just wonderful to meet you and spend time. Yeah, I'm so grateful. Yeah. I'm grateful for you too. Thank you.
Thanks,
Brent. What would you like to share with us today? I'm teary-eyed too. I'm also getting emotional. What is happening? The Lord is working this morning. The Lord's
we're all
working.
Getting dehydrated. It's all getting dehydrated here together.
Man.
So, I spent a lot of time this weekend with my family. It was just wonderful. I got 4 kids, chasing them around. I'm really just grateful for my children, the family that God's given me. I've joked that in many ways I'm the Forrest Gump of private equity, right? In the kind of the world that I live in professionally. And it was also true personally. I got married because I thought she was hot, and my wife turns into be this amazing, godly woman. I didn't want to have kids because I thought they were going to be an impediment to my success. And then we're blessed with 4 wonderful children. I can't imagine, anything else. And it's amazing how God takes the worst of us, our sin and our rebellion. And he not only doesn't give us what we deserve, but he gives us this incredible restoration and abundance. And I think that's where, I'm just really grateful for the community and the families that I've come in contact with. I'm grateful for my family and just this crazy life that if you'd asked me in my 20s, where would I be today? It would have been so shocking to be sitting here talking to you about Jesus. I would have thought that I had had some sort of brain surgery done on me. Anyway, so I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to come on here and chat with you all, and for what a great day it is.
Well, I'll just close this. I am grateful for you taking my message on X to have coffee that day, and the ways that you're helping me to grow in my faith with Jesus, to help me to try to be a better husband, father, and friend, for helping me to get out and want to walk with other men, because yes, you helped me start wanting to do that with you and I, but now I'm finding that I'm building other great relationships with other men as I get out and walk with them. And so I really, really appreciate you just getting that started for me. So thank you for that. For people that do want to get to know your thoughts, I follow you on X, where can they follow you there or someplace else? Because you do share a lot there.
Yeah, I don't share as much as I used to, but yeah, I'm on X, Twitter, whatever you call it these days, whatever the kids call it. I'm on LinkedIn. Those are probably the 2 best places. And I've written quite a bit more on the professional side on our website, permanentequity.com. But yeah, try to be a resource, and yeah, I'll be praying that this hits well and lands well for the listeners.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being a part of it. I look forward to walking with you soon, good sir. Weather's nice. It's summertime. It's walking weather.
Summertime. Amen. Thank you all.
Thank you. Everyone, we hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless.
Thank you for listening to Blended Blessed and Always a Mess. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and at blendedblessedalwaysamess.com.
Reach out to us on any of our social channels. We would love to hear from you. Have a great week.